Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. A lot of familiar faces. I'm thrilled today to have Steve Cadigan join us. Steve, wave to everybody. Say hello.
Oh,
We're
hello.
just going to have a nice, easy conversation on a topic I know all of us are really interested in, which is probably why you signed up to join, which is what is work going to look like going forward? What is our organizational structure going to look like? And how do I lead with all this change? We're all very focused on culture and engagement, and we have been. That's why we're part of the community. But we're kind of rebooting now, because what our employees want going forward is maybe something different than they wanted in the past. Steve, a 30-year HR exec, spent several years building the culture and talent at LinkedIn from 400 people to 4,000 people all the way through the IPO. Was in charge of not only HR, but culture, and has helped a ton of companies, small and large, with these kinds of issues. But he wrote this book called Workquake. And this book came out actually early in the pandemic, something that he had been thinking about for a number of years. So it is. So he kind of envisioned how things were changing even before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit right before he was going to publish it, and he had to rewrite a bunch of it. And then now we're 2.5 years into the pandemic. He probably would add different chapters to it. So we're all still learning together, but I think his perspective is going to be really interesting. And again, please raise your hand, go to the chat, whatever. We're just gonna have a nice conversation with Steve for the next hour. So, Steve, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Paul. I'm excited for the conversation today.
So tell us a little bit more about your background and what led you to be so curious about this topic and develop strong feelings about how things need to change.
Sure. Well, I consider myself a big company refugee, Paul. Most of my tenure in the world of work was big organizations where I was hired to tune and adjust. And I've worked in 6 different industries: fashion, insurance, semiconductor, internet working, video games, and then social networking / professional networking at LinkedIn. And I, over the course of that journey, really started to, and after having made many mistakes and seen a lot of mistakes, I had a chance in my last role at LinkedIn to build a company rather than tune a company. And walking into LinkedIn, I was so excited to tackle that challenge because I'd never been handed a pile of soft clay and asked to really build and architect an organization. I've been told, here's the culture, just make sure everyone understands it, versus walking into LinkedIn and having the founder say, well, what kind of culture should we have? What do you want? I'm like, what? No one's ever read off and asked me, what kind of culture do you want? I'm like, are you kidding me? You're 6 years old and you haven't really. He says, no, we've talked about it, but I want to invite you in to help us with that. And so that was great. It really challenged me, Paul, because I'd never been challenged that way to, what you're thinking about performance management or org structure or communication flow, or what is the right culture to build to facilitate hyper growth in a new market, in a new business. And it was really inspiring and but scary as heck, because I walked into LinkedIn thinking, well, how hard can this be to build a company? I've been in some of the best managed companies in the world, and I've been written up in the Wall Street Journal, and we've had really good success. And I failed to recognize that I'd never built a company before. And that's really, really different and hard. And so I left LinkedIn after about 4 years of hyper intense, great, crazy, stressful, anxiety-ridden experiences, and just took a breath for a while. I was the only executive that had small children, and so I was feeling a lot of parental guilt, and stepped aside and started to have a lot of young, early stage entrepreneurs approach me saying, can you tell us about the secret sauce? How did you think about this? And really looking at the LinkedIn success story with a lot of reverence. So that allowed me to start to work with entrepreneurs all over the world, and particularly in Central and Latin America, Western Europe, Canada. I'm on the board of 2 companies in Canada today. I have a lot of affection. I worked up there for 4 years. So that's been really fun, not only as a laboratory for me to learn, but also as a place where I can see what's working, what's not, and how people are thinking differently about different parts of leadership and culture. And so that inspired me to sort of say, I think there's some dots that I could connect that will help people navigate these frustrations that they're feeling that they're just not able to articulate.
Talk about the relationship between employees and employers and how that relationship is evolving. So before we get to what you would say today, based on everything that we're going through, as you started to write this book, which was ready to come out pre-COVID, what were you already noticing about how those relationships were evolving?
Well, yeah, even before COVID, both parties in that relationship were frustrated. And I think they both suffered the same problem, which is the visibility to the future. The certainty of a plan was less certain than ever before. And both parties have a problem in that it's the same one. What skills do I need for the future is unknown. And that's really uncomfortable. You know, when you think about business and the models that we use in large part today, they're built to realize stability. I want consistent, reliable, predictable results, which means things like, I want to keep you here a long time because then I understand you, I have more confidence in the reliability of your performance. And what we're finding is over the last 20, 30 years, as technology, the advent of technology, the implementation, the acceleration of technology, and our inability to meet the skills needed to leverage that technology, what referred to as a skill gap, is just growing. Every company's concerned that they hire the right skills to be able to meet the needs of the future, and every employee is left worrying, you know, do I have the right skills, and what are those right skills? And the shelf life, and what I saw was happening, and this has been backed up by lots of research, is the shelf life value of a hard skill, something you learn, used to be about the length of your career, lasts you about 50 years. And today it's 5 or 10. And then you're going to need to relearn. And that's not the deal I signed up for. Like, wait, I got to go relearn stuff. Oh, wait, and I got to unlearn stuff. So, you know, we're seeing the erosion of the shelf life value of a skill, you know, that it was really diminishing, and organizations being frustrated and going to hire to new skills versus build new skills. And that's putting pressure on the business model, because most businesses weren't built to massively reskill and upskill their talent. They're more built to, let's go get a new system and let's go hire new people with the new skills that we need. So those are some of the, I think, pain points. And as we were talking a little bit off air before we came on, Paul, I mean, I was starting to see that the business models that most organizations use of any size were really built on frameworks that don't make sense today. And let's just go right. I'll throw culture right on the table. Most people, when they think about culture, think about it in, I need to lay these pillars. Those are the words we use, the pillars, the foundations, which implies immovable, you know, solid, you know, static things that can't change. But humans do change, and they need to change really fast. So the cultures that are super powerful in the future are ones that can grow and evolve. And Julia Hartz, who's the founder of Eventbrite, co-founder of Eventbrite with her husband, has a wonderful YouTube where she talks about waking up one day, having a nightmare that she wanted to be a great company, and she thought that meant fun and people were super happy. And she woke up one day after a few quarters where they didn't meet their number, and she said, I had this nightmare that I've just made the happiest, most mediocre company in the world. and that what she learned in experimenting with culture and happiness and the collision of those things as part of this whole chemistry of what a compelling culture looks like, is that winning and thriving was far more valuable to her team than beer Fridays and ping pong tables and free food. And I think there's been a misunderstanding in the extreme war for talent of people sort of getting seduced that the perk arms race is really what culture is all about. And that's kind of like a sugar high. You know, it feels good, tastes good, but is that really going to produce winning outcomes, right? And she articulates that really, really well.
now we're 2 years into this pandemic, and we've all suffered and are surviving or thriving. In some cases, everybody's experience has been different. Uh, how has what's happened over the last couple of years either accelerated your thoughts or changed your thoughts about what the future of work is going to look like?
I really feel I had a moment. I finished the book, then I was just editing it, and the pandemic hits. And then I'm like, oh crap, I can't release a book that doesn't even address the pandemic. And I didn't know the shelf life of it, right? Like, how long is this going to last? And that was a moment for me. And I had a few sleepless nights like, man, is this going to be even worth anything? And then I realized about a few weeks later that everything that I was talking about was going to probably be accelerated by the pandemic. So let's just take turnover, for example, right? Most organizations are built on a model. I want to keep you here longer, but we saw the trend even before the pandemic that people were leaving jobs faster, particularly knowledge workers. And in the last 7 years in the US, it's gone from about 5 to about 4. And for workers between the ages of 25 and 35, last year, it came down to about 2.5 years median. Okay. That means half of the workforce in that demographic is leaving a job before 2.5 years. It's like, wait a second, Paul, we just finished your new hire orientation. You're leaving? Like, what happened? And what's interesting is that the pandemic has really accelerated that. We've all seen the news, right? More voluntary resignations than any time since we've been tracking it. And what's also happened, which I didn't see coming, was more people to the magnitude. I didn't see it coming to the degree that it has. More people going independent, more people wanting to take control of their future, and facilitated by more platforms today that allow you to produce work on your own. Platforms like this that we're talking on right now, or whether it's a SoundCloud or a YouTube or a TikTok. Mediums that allow you to be able to earn a living without having to have a job. And that's presented new choices for people, right? And what was particularly interesting, and the roots of why people are leaving jobs are really worth a deep, deep dive. But, you know, in the last 25 years, we've had more new industries born than at any period in history. You know, if you look at the Airbnbs, the Instagrams, the Ubers, the Snaps, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the Googles, I mean, all these companies are creating not just new jobs, but new industries. And then companies like General Electric, which were seen as the icon of, you know, American business and leadership, are doing a faceplant, belly flop, losing trillions of dollars of market value. And so it's creating massive confusion around, well, what should I do and why should I do it? And what's a good choice for me? Like, where should I work? And if you talk to any salesperson, it's much easier to sell a customer 3 choices than 500. And I look at the landscape of choice today, of career choices that people have, of where should I go? What should I do? Almost akin to Thursday, Friday night, you whip up the Netflix and you spend the whole night looking at previews and you never choose a movie. Like, did I see the last episode of Ted Lasso? You know, oh my gosh, there's a new Narcos series. And you don't know what to do. And that, you know, what's super interesting is that we shouldn't see the amount on looking with an old model of work lens. We shouldn't see the turnover we're seeing. We shouldn't see the rise of disengagement, because both parties have more information to make a better and more intelligent career choice or hire than ever. We've got more information about employers and employees about each other than ever. Why are people more unhappy, more miserable, more disengaged, and why are they leaving? And I think it's because we're aware more now today of what we don't have in a job or what the other choices could be. And I think there's some envy and fear of missing out that's driving this. And we're still reconciling this huge transparent universe of work that never existed before, right? And I'm sure many of the people who are attending today are building models of work, businesses that never existed. Like, you're not going to take out something. You're looking at a new model, a new paradigm, if you will, that didn't exist before. And one of my favorite moments at LinkedIn was listening to Reid Hoffman, the chairman and founder, be asked one day, hey, Reed, you got this really strange LinkedIn business model. Like, who's your biggest competitor? Like, who worries you the most? And he says, I worry more about a company that hasn't been invented yet than I do about an entrenched competitor, because someone could build a paradigm, game changer that's going to obsolete my model. And it just rocked me. I'm like, whoa, how do you prepare a business to be competitive when your competition maybe doesn't exist yet? How do you build a moat that protects that? Which is super, super, it's just an interesting way I never looked at it that way. And I think a lot of us, are starting to recognize that, those opportunities are really, are different than they used to be. My kids want to be YouTubers, for example. My kids want to be influencers. And that's a beautiful thing. And at first, when they told me that, I was concerned. Even I have friends at YouTube, and I have a lot of respect for them, and have a YouTube account. My kids say, Dad, you've got like 60 followers. You're so lame. And I'm like, yeah, but the more I thought about YouTube as a career path, what they learn watching YouTube is, if I create content that's valuable, that other people value, okay, then I become valuable. And that's like a micro MBA course of epic proportions. I create value that other people value, I become valuable. Well, that's great. So now the trick is, well, what is that value you're going to create? And it feels to me like that's driving a lot of the turnover right now, is people taking control and wanting to be able to do their own thing.
Yeah. Is part of that good? In other words, we talk about disengagement and people wanting to leave, but we're all, even as business leaders or owners, reevaluating our lives, taking this time to reflect. Mm-hmm. I have teenage kids who I think are very socially aware in the world. And as they get into the workplace, it's not just about making money. They want to make a difference. And although we sometimes look at that early, or the younger generation, as being fickle and job hopping, what's wrong with that until they find something that they're comfortable with and where they feel that they're truly being valued?
100%. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great. And what I have the, unfortunate responsibility to do, and LinkedIn has given me license to do this with wild abandon, is go out into the world and say, do you see high turnover in your organization? Because every client I have in the world, especially the big ones, say, my biggest problem is I can't find the people I need. And when I do, they don't stay. And I say, okay, well, let's break that down. Do you anticipate in the future people are going to stay longer? And say, no, I don't. Okay, so you believe that the trend of people staying shorter is going to continue. And do you believe that there's more things impacting how your employees see their role in your company out of your control than ever before? Yes. Okay. So why is every one of your benefits rewarding people staying a long time when you just told me they're not going to? And I said, so let's look at diminishing our fears for a more fluid world of work, and look at organizations creating value when people stay shorter periods of time. There's a model out there right now, Paul. It's, it's consulting, the consulting world, the EYs, the Accentures, the Bains, the Boston Consulting Group, Deloitte's, et cetera. Their general business model is come here and then please leave for a better job. And the better the job you get, the easier I can recruit younger, college graduates to take your place. And the better I look, and I want you to, and then I can make more profit because I can pay the new grad hire less than I'm paying you when you've been here 5 years. I'm profiting on you getting a better job. It's a beautiful model. Now, it doesn't work for every business, obviously, but if I look at a lot of the tech companies that everyone's familiar with, Airbnb, Snap, Microsoft, Oracle, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, the median tenure in those companies is all less than 2 years. Maybe we've overvalued long tenure and undervalued and underappreciated new people with new ideas and new energy and new ways of solving problems. And I'll put this home for a lot of folks who are attending today. When we sat around the boardroom at LinkedIn and there was a problem, like we got hacked, or customer has an issue, or we're seeing a trend in the data that's really troubling, we'd sit around the table and the CEO would say, hey, when you were at Yahoo, how'd you solve the problem? Hey, when you're at Google, how'd you solve this problem? When you're at Adobe, Cisco, whatever, That was our intelligence of problem solving, was our collective experiences at other places. And not to cast aspersions to, like, I don't know, let's take a company that's been around a long time. G, hey, when you're at G, how'd you solve this problem? When, when you're at GE, that division, and it's only GE people. They've not been in other industries and other places. You're suffering a little bit of stagnation of creativity. Mm-hmm. And for me, I looked at some data recently to help. I was working with a construction company in Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia. And they're saying, oh, Steve, those are all technology companies. Give us another industry that's facing, having this creativity innovation challenge and tenure. And I said, okay, let's look at automobile industry. I said, what company in the automobile industry is worth the most? It's not the company making the most profit, selling the most cars. It's not the company that has people staying the longest. It's Tesla, who is worth more than Ford, Honda, Toyota, and General Motors combined. They're worth $850-ish billion. Why is the market valuing this company way more than all those others together when they haven't been around, and most of the people they hired are not from the automobile industry, and they're not staying those 5-10 years as they are in these other companies? They're valuing that because they say that company can innovate. They're not stuck in their ways of doing it. So I offer those examples, Paul, because I think I'm trying to, build an argument that there's power in new people and new ideas.
Yeah.
There really is.
Take advantage and you're right. I mean, many of us in our companies, we have always talked about, we're going to promote from within, we're going to build culture, we're going to reward loyalty. And the way of the world is, it's just not that way anymore. And so for those that are attending today that are primarily smaller companies, and you've worked with lots of small companies, what does the future organization look like? And as people are thinking about returning to work, or just this model of virtual versus in office, what do you foresee is the method going forward?
Okay. We've got a moment right now because of the state of the world, where talent supply is less than it's ever been, that where it's forcing us to be creative. Now, I happen to be, dialing in from Silicon Valley, which has arguably been one of the most competitive marketplaces of the world for talent. And you have to be really, really thoughtful around your value proposition as an organization, or people will leave and they'll walk across the street. So you got to be on your game. And so what I start seeing is things that are going to feel really uncomfortable for some people who are used to static models. For example, I believe the future of work is corporations, organizations are going to be smaller at the core, and they're going to have many more what I call permeable boundary relationships with entities on the outside. And I believe it's already happening, especially during the pandemic. More independent contractors, more gig workers, more non-employees creating value for your organization than ever before. And we're already seeing that. Like if you've taken an Uber or Lyft, your interaction with that organization is not with an employee. It's with somebody they've retained to deliver their service to you. And your experience with their company culture is not with an employee. This is weird, but it's different. And I think that's what I see. I think we're going to see more fluidity, which means people are going to continue to move faster. And I think it's a challenge for us, because a lot of the models we've built, and I've been guilty of this earlier in my career, is I only care about you when you work here. When you leave, I don't care about you. You've divorced me, you've dumped me, you don't care about me. I call it the Tony Soprano school of HR. What, you quit? You're dead to me. In a world that's more fluid, think about this, Paul, in a world that's more fluid, more people are leaving, every organization will have more alumni than ever. Most organizations don't even talk to the alumni. Why? I think we're going to see more communities build, more nurturing and curating of that alumni base to refer people, to bring deals, to be positive influences in the universe. And that we're going to see more organizations recruit on a proposition, which again, it's a little bit out there and it's going to be uncomfortable, particularly for those older organizations, which is, please come here because I'm going to help you leave. And, and looking at tenure of people as an experience, not a career. I
Mm-hmm.
work with so many founders of companies helping students find jobs, and they get the students a job offer, and the students like, I don't want to take it. And the company's like, well, why not? We got you this job offer. Because I don't want to commit. What do you mean you don't want to commit? What is a commitment to you? Well, I don't want to be there 2 years. Maybe I'm going to find something different. And that is a big psychological shift. And it's not a bad thing. Like you said earlier, it's just, we're going to need to deconstruct jobs. And this is the last point, and I'll turn it over to you when you're asking about what's a future look like. I think jobs that take a year to learn, 6 months to learn, are going to be endangered species. I was in Atlanta a few months ago, and the head of manufacturing for this huge global packaging company was frustrated. Guy looked like he was ready to check into the hospital. I'm like, what's wrong? He goes, I got these huge machines, and it takes me 6 years to train someone how to do it. And then after 8 years, they leave. I said, well, I think you need to change how you look at that problem, in that maybe you need to train 7 people in 3 months to learn how to manage that machine, different pieces of it, rather than one for 6 years, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot. We're going to need to look at work differently to account for people not staying as long, and building like an insurance policy, if you will, that if someone leaves, we don't get, a single point of failure.
Seems to me that now we have to completely rethink our efforts on training and development. And like you said, it may be how quickly we onboard someone, to realizing we're training people to leave, which is okay. Tim in the chat had a great question. I'm just going to read it and have you answer that. He says, I can appreciate the mindset of changing with a more evolving or rotating of the internal team. We're even working on to buy into this. Question I have is, how do you manage the issue of time spent training new people all the time? That can be seen as real dollars spent every time. So a big investment. Maybe this is still an old way of thinking, but I'm interested in how you would address this concern.
Training and learning and development is now going to be core to an organization's vitality. I 100% believe that. How you build people, that's the value proposition. Here's what people want. And I believe the training and learning is going to move on to the spreadsheet of things that employees are going to start to see as their compensation. Don't promise me a job. Promise that you're going to make me better for an uncertain future. Promise that you're going to grow me and challenge me. So what that means is people are going to leave anyway. They're going to leave anyway. Okay. So Tim, like, we got to just prepare for that and accept it. And what's the consequence if you're not developing your people? Well, you're not going to get the best people, because the best people can see who's developing other people and they want to go there. And here's the what feels like a catch-22. If I develop you, I could make it more likely you're going to get recruited away. But if I don't develop you, my business is going to stagnate. So I have to develop you. And I think that is what we have to all lean into, which is the more I invest in you, I think the more likely you may want to stay. And that's what people, I think, are switching, because when I change jobs, I meet new people, I grow my network, I learn new things. And so that's the business case for, building diverse experiences for your people. And it's not, when I think about training, Tim, I think about it maybe a little bit differently. And this is back to the point you made, Paul, around deconstructing work. I think we need to deliver work experiences that include learning and value creation for the company. Those two can happen at the same time. And we've been separating those. No, you do your job, and then we're going to have a class, or you're going to do some online Coursera work after. The job has to include new projects, new people, new leadership styles, new departments. And that is going to be enriching for both, right? And it feels sort of counter to how we've been taught, but that's why, like, the learning by doing and adding value and new experiences. We did something at LinkedIn, which I, please steal it, borrow it if you want. And again, the reason we did this is because a lot of old models are a little bit broken and they don't account for a faster pace, which is, we created this notion of what I call a career burst. I'm going to send you over there for 2 weeks. You're going to go to help grow our Australia office and hire them. Maybe it's not directly related to what you're doing, but you know the culture, you know what we're about. I want you to go there. And they're like, you're going to send me to Australia? And now I've just created someone who's going to tweet, going to post, going to blog about how great the company is, because we're just sending them on an adventure. And that's really powerful. And then even if they go, they're going to be a positive force in your universe. And this is the thing, Tim, when we look at our training and investment, it's not for just you, it's for your future, and it's the ecosystem of goodness and goodwill, I think, that we need to build. And it's very different from what we're used to doing. So it feels a little bit uncomfortable, right?
So one more question from me, and then I want to open it up to all of you guys to raise your hand, talk about a situation, whatever we can get Steve's wisdom on. But what I'm thinking about is, if I'm a leader right now in the situation I'm in, which is I'm questioning our organization, I'm questioning how can I just be a different and better leader? How do I adjust the relationship I have with my employees and get ready for these changes, or start to adjust myself as a leader? What are the first couple steps you'd recommend?
I think the first thing is to recognize, there's probably a few things, but the first thing is to recognize that your success as an organization is how adaptable your organization is. And so we've been hiring traditionally for experience. And I think what we need to hire for more is learning velocity. And this is another big point that I try to make in my book, and I'm really feeling more stronger about now than ever, which is, in a world where job descriptions, when we will hire someone, we write a job description, we put it out there. Here's the truth about those job descriptions. They're accurate for about 3 weeks. Then the job changes and new responsibilities come in, or the market conditions shift, or the customer needs change, and your job's changing. But we've hired for the safety and comfort that you know how to do something. We've not accounted for the fact the job's going to change. So what I want to hire for is learning velocity. Where we're headed is leaders are going to need to learn that what someone can learn is almost going to be more valuable to me than what they know. And so leaders are going to become talent development experts. Like I said, learning, training, and development is moving from the fringe to the core of a business. Leaders are going to need to rethink not just creating value for the company, but creating a greater value of that individual, if you will. And so what I say is, when you're interviewing people today, instead of talking about our vision, our mission, our values, is ask the candidate, hey, tell me about your vision. What's your vision? What's your mission? What are your values? And sort of flip the script, if you will. I got to know where you're thinking. And I was just in Houston yesterday, meeting with a leader, and he was telling me, I used to never want to interview someone if they said, well, I only want to stay here 2 years. And now I'm talking to him. I'm like, okay, great. If you want to stay here 2 years, I'm going to make it the best 2 years you've ever had. And thinking to themselves, maybe it'll be 3 then, and so, and flipping that a little bit. And that's, the need for talent and the lack of supply is causing people to sort of say, let me reframe what I'm trying to solve here. And the leadership flip is going to be really dramatic, because we have to create value for the individual and for the company if we want, I think, people to stay and make the company better, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, let's open it up to the group. Use the little feature, raise your hand, ask a question. A lot of good comments in the chat as well. Who's got a question for Steve? Or if you want to challenge his perspective, that's okay too. You guys aren't a quiet group. Come on.
Steve, I actually had a question for you. Another one, actually.
There you go. Yeah.
So I'm in the staffing space myself. So we do mass hire for light industrial, and we do find that our industry sometimes is very forgotten in terms of, like, no one knows how to really do anything on a mass scale, and that's from technology to kind of like the volume that we need to kick out. So I guess what experience or what do you see on that side of things that you maybe have for some of the high volume that we do for our clients, and retaining that as opposed to just an internal team? I don't know if you have any advice for that.
I'm not sure if this is what you're asking, Tim, but I would say we need to move in the world that we live in today. We need to move from a seek talent when we need talent to always seeking talent and always building the funnel all the time. So are you a basketball fan at all? Do you follow college basketball? Okay. So then you'll know in 2007, the NBA instituted a rule that said, you can't join the NBA unless you've been in college for a year. Okay. Now it's changed a few times even since then. But what happened was the Duke basketball coach Krzyzewski was like this notion of one and done was like so alien. It's like, I'm not going to take those people that just want to come and go. Like, I need 3 to 4 years to build a world-class team and to take this team to the March Madness and win. And that rule change completely forced him to have to build a different model. He has to build a world-class team with new players every single year. And one of the things he learned that he had to do was, I'm going to sell you on your future. Like, if you don't make it in the NBA, but you come to Duke, we'll help you get a, coaching job, analyst job, scout job. But more so, Coach K had to recruit all the time. If you know your talent is only the best people, the Zion Williamson, the Cam Reddish, the RJ Barretts, if they're going to leave after a year or 9 months, even not even graduate, what do you have to do? You have to be recruiting all the time. And I think we've got sort of a knee-jerk history when how we think about recruiting. Okay. Here's the other thing, Tim, that's sort of like, this is the checkmate move in my book, which is in a supply challenged universe of talent, your only way through that is to grow the talent long-term. And I feel this is where a lot of, particularly those of you hiring knowledge workers, know it's increasingly hard to do it. So we're used to hiring people that are 80 to 90 to 100% qualified for what we're looking for. And we're moving to a world where that's going to come down to 50 to 60%, because there just aren't a lot of people to have that. So what does that mean? I got to be able to know how to grow that, fill that gap of, 30, 40, 50%. And again, it feels uncomfortable, right? It feels awkward to have to face that, but we need to move in from hunting to growing. That's the long-term play here. And when you're small, it's hard to do that, right? Because it's all hands on deck and I don't have enough people to do that. But if I'm in your shoes, Tim, and I'm helping other organizations solve their talent needs, I mean, you've got a business, you're making money doing that, but I think you want to help themselves longer term. It's going to be, how do we move from a talent buying business to growing business? Because that's the longer term, which means more internships, closer relationship with schools, or apprenticeships, in your case, whatever it is. Like, I'm on the board of a company, it's a manufacturing company in LA. They do high quality glass. So we put in a lot of the glass at SoFi or the casinos in Vegas. Those are our customers. And it became real clear to us in the last few months that the supply of glazers, the people installing the glass, okay, is shrinking because high schools aren't teaching the trades as much. And that investment's shrinking up. So we're like, oh my gosh, who's developing our supply of talent? Nobody. We're going to need to get with unions. We're going to need to get with other manufacturers like us in the construction world. We're going to have to build our supply. We're going to have to mentor high schools and other students. And we're going to have to, lock arms with our competition, or we're all going to be hurt, So just some thoughts when I hear that question. Hopefully that's helpful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tim. A couple good questions in the chat, Steve. One, from Jordan, how does a strong connection to the core purpose of the organization impact retention and engagement?
Listen, I think that's your differentiator today. If you're a small business right now, I got to tell you something. If you're out there recruiting and saying, we're nice, we got a great culture, we really like people, our mission's really important, we got great investors, you're going to make a lot of money. So what? Everyone says that. You better come up with something really, really compelling. And trust me, when you're hiring like I was in the shadow of Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Groupon was hot when I was recruiting, and also Zynga. If you don't have a story that stands out and is meaningful, it's just going to be blah, 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 blah. How much are you going to pay me? They're not going to hear it. And so what we had to do at LinkedIn, and this is something that I feel I had a big hand in helping shape, was, we sat around the board one day and it's like, hey, our offer decline rate's unacceptable. And if the market finds out that LinkedIn doesn't know how to recruit and we're selling a recruiting product, we're kind of screwed here. So failure is not an option. We better figure out how to recruit. So the first question I would say you want to ask if you're stuck right now is, ask yourself, why does anyone want to work here? That is the best question that gets at your mission, your purpose, your values. Why does anyone want to work here? And then once you're clear on that, And don't do the usual, because we're nice, we got a great culture, every Friday, we have fun. Everyone says that. Once you've answered that, then say, what assets do we have? So we realized, and we built a great culture, not because we were like, hey, let's build a great culture. We built a great culture because we had nothing else and it cost us nothing but commitment. We said, we're the professional network. We should be the best place anyone's ever worked because it's our birthright. We're LinkedIn. And we said, come here. And this will be the best experience you've ever had. And we can't outpay the Google choices. We're not perfect for everybody. We're not going to, Google could out benefit me, out perk me, out work environment me, out, daycare center me every 9 days, 10 days out of the week. So what do we have? We're solving a problem that really, really matters. Helping people find their dream job. Oh, you want to help kids develop their short attention span and perfect the art of not doing their homework? Well, then go ahead and work at Facebook. That's cool. You go for it. Or you want to be engineer number 7,000 and not know what you're working on? Go ahead and buff the trophies of the people before you at Google. That's fine. And if you want to make more money, that's great. But if you want to put your fingerprints on building something magical and really shape it in your image and solve something that's really never been solved, then come here. And that's why I think being really clear on what that is and having people ideally connect to it is important. And feeling comfortable. Here's the thing, when you're a founder in a small company, you never like to hear your baby's ugly. You never like to hear that someone's not going to want to work here. But guess what? Not everyone's right for you. And not everyone is suited for a chaotic, hyper growth, all hands on deck experience that you may be offering. Some people want a little bit more comfort and a little more predictability and less stress. So you better be clear on what's the right psyche, what's the right framework of people who are just going to come in and have a blast, right? And make a big difference.
And it's the story that you're telling, and it's your brand, whether it's selling to customers and employees. That's what's so critical going forward, at defining that and communicating it well. Really great point. I want to bring in Bo Burlingham, who's my co-founder in the Small Giants community and wrote the book. I think he's got a question for you. Bo?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Steve, I find this all very fascinating, and thank you so much for joining us here. I have a question that's really, I spend a lot of time working with companies that practice open book management, but a particular type of open book management called the great game of business. And that involves employees actually really understanding everything about the business, which is how it works, how they make money, how they, what they contribute, what their peers contribute, and so forth. And which is not the way most companies work. And what we find is that those people tend to stick around more. And when they leave, they tend to come back. Because once you have had that knowledge of what's going on in a company and you know everything about it, you know whether or not your job's in jeopardy. You know exactly how the company is doing and what are the challenges it faces and whether it can meet those. If you go to a place where you don't know any of that and where that information is not shared with you, you realize you're missing something, and you're missing something big. How does that fit in with what you're talking about, Steve?
Mm-hmm. I believe what you're talking about is this more transparent relationship that organizations are building with their employees is one, I believe, that is spawned or comes from a place of, we believe that information will make you trust us more, that you will respect us more, and that you will have greater, another dimension of high performing teams, you'll have greater psychological safety. Fear and lack of fear is driven. We're humans. The less information we have, we assume the worst. And I think that is a very mature, more rare than the norm model. I would be excited to, introduce that to organizations. I mean, I have some organizations that are asking me, should we be publishing what everyone makes? Should we be making that known to people in the spirit of, we want to show you we're fair. And I said, well, compensation and fairness is a slippery slope. Be very, very careful when you do that, because most people think they're not paid enough, and most people think other people are paid too much. So that's really hard to make transparent. But why you're making decisions, how the business is doing, you can do that when you're smaller and you're private. You know, this was when we hit the IPO track at LinkedIn, the biggest fear that we had, Bo, was that when you're publicly traded, you have a statutory requirement to not share information that's material to your employees before you share it with shareholders, right?
Yes.
So we didn't want to do that. So, and the lawyers were about ready to have a coronary. They're like, no, you can't do that. And I said, we're going to trust the employees to not reveal that. And we told the employees, we want to tell you what our plans are before the market. And the lawyers are telling us, don't do that. And if you leak that, then that's going to be problematic for our desire to want to share that with you more frequently, right? So we put that to the test. But the spirit of what you're talking about, I think, is going to be revealed more frequently, because the power is moving to the hands of the workforce right now. And their desire is to know what's going on. I want to know. I don't want to be led by the black box school of leadership, right?
Yeah. You know, it's very practical too. I just last night, I was co-owner of a restaurant for a number of years, and I visited last night and sat down with the chef, who I got to know very well, who's key to this restaurant success. And he was complaining that he doesn't have access to the financials of the restaurant. And so, and yet he sees how busy it is. They're busier than they were pre-pandemic. He can't hire enough people. He can't get the owner to invest, make small investments to make things better. And he doesn't have the knowledge of how they're doing, and it's starting to erode trust. And I think that's what you see across organizations. So this idea of transparency, Bo, is definitely going to be a bigger and bigger part of the future. Let me try to get to a couple more quick questions here that people have posted. Harris asked, what type of learning and development programs do you find to be the most helpful? Is there a way to prioritize, or where would people start if they really haven't invested as much up to now?
Well, the first thing, Harris, is I would encourage you to not look at learning in the context of a program. In human resources, we used to jokingly say to ourselves, if you want something to fail in your company, call it an HR program. It will never work. I think I would look at learning as embedding. Like, this is, move it to the core. How do you design jobs so people are learning by doing, which is new experiences, new assignments, new projects, not a program. Okay. Now, if it's me, what I want to recruit for and what I want to make sure I am striving to grow from a learning perspective is the capacity to learn new things faster and apply them. That's what I want. The faster, I call it learning velocity. The more people I have that can pivot, learn, adapt, and adjust, the faster I have the ability to move, adapt, and adjust as a business. And so, but that's not what we've built for. We've built for stability, which means don't move people around, keep them here for a long time and smother them. And as I mentioned in the Tesla example, it's not working in this high velocity world of work where things are really uncertain in the future. So that's how I would think about it. I would think about things like bring your alumni in to teach courses, bring your former employees that were really, really great, that are doing something different, to come in and talk about all the learning that they've had. Don't look at, and here's one of the things that just drives me crazy. Every company I've ever worked for, we got to do a mentor program. People want a coach, people want a mentor. Okay, let's go figure out who the employees are that, the leaders are that should be the mentors. No one ever goes outside. Why do you think that only the great ideas of your business or the great coaching can come from inside? So come from outside, bring those people in, grow the networks of your people. You know, there's venture firms around the world. There's a bunch up the street here on Sand Hill Road in Silicon Valley that particularly Andreessen Horowitz is known to do this really, really well. They've got Andreessen has a staff of about 15 people, and all they do is grow the networks for their partner companies, not hire people. They say, oh, you need to talk to someone about expanding into China. We got a few people for you. Oh, you need someone who's taking a company public. We got someone for you. All they're doing is connecting people. And why don't we have someone doing that in most of our organizations? Why? Right. So I would say if you've got an investor or you've got someone who's got those resources, tap them. Right. And so don't think about this, I believe, and you sort of hit a hot button for me. Don't think about this as a program, but those are the things, if I'm going after, that I want to build. And those are places I think that are like these, just full on network connectors. Because here's the thing that Reid Hoffman said, again, the founder of LinkedIn. Today, sometimes who you know is more important than what you know, because it's impossible to know everything, but knowing people who know stuff, really important. It's a big part of my book too, is, and sometimes when you say networking, people think, oh, cocktail party with a bunch of strangers. Networking is helping people that you know and asking for help from people that you know. That's networking. And we tend to not appreciate all the people that we know. I got my job at LinkedIn at a kid's birthday party. That's how I got the job. It was, my kid was in daycare and someone else in his class was having a birthday party. And I thought, oh, great. A whole day of kids on sugar, screaming and yelling. This is just going to be wonderful. And I was working in electronic arts at the time. Well, I met another dad who felt like I did. We sort of rolled our eyes in the morning like, oh, this is going to be great. And he was applying for a job at LinkedIn, and I helped him negotiate a better package. And a few months later, he called me and said, hey, you want to come and apply? It was a kid's birthday party. And so, those are the sort of the unexpected ways that life can turn. But anyway, so a long-winded way of answering, like, yeah, I think we need to embed it in, and be able to sort of help our people, build the capacity to grow themselves versus have this paternalistic view that we do to them. I think that's a better way of approaching it.
Yeah, I love making it core and not making it a program. That's a really great point. I think we can get through just a couple more. This one has to do, I think, more with recruiting. From Paul, says, are pre-employment tests changing to accommodate the changing workforce? That is, should we be testing different characteristics or have different criteria now as we're recruiting going forward?
I am a very suspicious person about testing in general. Having worked for people who never went to college or who dropped out of high school and were some of the most brilliant people I've ever been around. I think I want to be very, very careful. I think we need to do a better job of sort of the anatomy of what a great performer can look like. And I think we're stuck on pedigree and knowledge, where, someone, to me, that's really valuable is someone who can make someone else better. Maybe they're not the master of their craft, but maybe they can help other people be masters of their craft. So yes, but I do think there's a lot of work that's going into AI right now to be able to help identify in your own portfolio who's really great and what skills are really helpful and who's got things like high learning velocity. And here's another thing that I sort of push back to a lot of the big organizations that I work with. They say, Steve, we got a big recruiting problem. Can't hire the people we need. I said, well, let me ask you a question that should be the precursor to you telling me that you have a recruiting problem. Do you know all the skills of all the people in your organization? No company does. Why? How can you start looking outside until you know with, beyond a shadow of a doubt that you don't have something inside or someone can't learn something new? And let me give you an example. In 2010, we realized at LinkedIn that data analytics, data insights were going to be super important to us. So we said, well, what skill is needed to reveal that for us at scale? Well, it's a programming language called Python. So then we said, well, who in our organization knows Python? Like 2 people. Okay, well, we're LinkedIn. How many people in the world know Python? Yeah, hardly anyone. It's a new language. Okay, that was iterating and becoming really seen as really useful. So we knew we needed a lot of people with Python. So what we did was we took a look at everyone who knew Python and said, what languages did they know before Python? What in their anatomy of skills gives us a high degree of confidence they could be really good with this language? And so we found those people in our company. We tapped them on the shoulder and said, we've designed a month-long boot camp. You can sign up for this. You don't have to do your regular job. We want to train you. Would you be up for that? And they were just fired up. But that approach is something I very rarely see organizations really, really go deep on. And I really strongly suggest that we look differently at the anatomy of skills. Because what's a test? What's the purpose of a test in theory? Purpose of an employment test is to raise your confidence level that the person you hire is more likely to be successful, right? I think there's lots of other things that you can do to supplement that, and that's not the only one. And I'm excited about some of these new. There's an organization in Boston called Filtered AI that tests people without name, without gender, without any pedigree of experience, and they've proven to some very, very successful organizations that the biases that they have tied to what's on someone's CV have blocked them from hiring people who are testing off the charts, right? So super interesting how that's evolving right now.
Great insight, Steve. We are coming up to the end of the hour. I want to turn it over to Hemza for a couple announcements, but I really appreciate everything that you said. The book is Workquake. Check it out. Lots of great practical stuff in there. Things are changing. We all have to get on board with that. Steve, thank you very much for being with us today. Hemza, let me turn it back over to you.
Thank you all so much for submitting your questions and your comments. Thank you, Steve, for your insights and sharing your expertise today. We will share the recording and the notes from today's conversation and also more information about Steve's book. One more thing that's top of mind for the Small Giants community is that we are getting ready for our summit, which is taking place April 26th to 28th in Detroit, Michigan. I'll drop a little link here if you are interested in learning more about it, and we hope to see you in future events. Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Be well.
Bye.